Welcome to the Legacy Leaders Podcast. Are you doing the best for your client to help them create their legacy? Are you creating a plan that goes far beyond finances to help people ensure that it becomes the driving force behind all decisions? On this podcast, hosts Katie Beth Hand and Stan Miller will help you with growing your practice and your clients' peace of mind. Together, they bring the best and brightest minds to share with you how to help your clients develop their best legacy. And now, here are your hosts, Katie Beth and Stan.
Welcome to the Legacy Leaders Podcast. I'm your guest host, Matrona Jessica Ward. Today, my guest is financial planning expert, Roland Ortiz. Roland, thank you so much for joining me.
Oh, more than welcome. I'd love to share.
So I'm curious, what made you start out as a financial advisor? Why did you become one?
Well, for me, it actually was a thing that I stumbled into. I didn't plan to be a financial advisor. My education experience was taking me down the road of legal. And I was actually working for audits for the city attorney's office in San Diego. And then I went to a law firm. We did real estate transactions. So my focus was in that direction. And then I kind of stumbled into financial advising. What we did, we started an investment club and a couple of attorneys. And I found that I was really enjoying the time that we were not working on cases, but actually working on financial planning. They would come to me and they all knew that I had focused in law school on trust and estate planning. And so they often had questions regarding that, tax planning. They had questions. So, and the markets, obviously I have an econ degree, and then that kind of gave me the background for them to ask those questions. And I found that I really enjoyed being part of their story. And there's another backstory to that. And this is going to answer the question, why did you become a financial advisor? Everything that we do in life has this accumulation of an impact on other things. And I was actually a military journalist at one time in my young, youthful days. And in those days, I wrote stories on different service members across the world, Air Force, Marines, Army, all of them. And I really enjoyed getting to know their stories. Getting to know them so I could write the best story that I could, but it left its mark on me. So later on, when I was in legal work and I found that I really enjoyed being part of someone's story of giving advice, it kind of did that tie back to the time when I was in the military of listening to somebody's story. Now I was actually being part of somebody's story. So it was more of an emotional feeling to get into financial advising. They always ask you what you would do if you had no money as an object. And financial advising just comes natural to me. And I really enjoy it. And I probably would do it without even getting paid. But obviously, we all have to make a living. So this is what I decided to take a new course in my life and do the necessary licenses and necessary qualifications and education. And I got into the field quite a bit ago.
And you founded your own firm, is that correct?
That's correct. I started with Merrill Lynch Wealth Management. That was the first one out of the gates. I learned a lot there, a lot of good dinosaurs to mentor from. Some guys from New York Stock Exchange, Wall Street, Goldman Sachs, Bear Stearns, even some that went under over the years. But it was a good teaching moment. But it gave me the foundation for doing my own firm.
Yeah, I can see that. And what sets you apart from other people who are in your field?
Well, I think it's the background, right? Because most advisors that you come across, this is what they've done since the beginning. For whatever motivated them getting into the financial world, their motivations were a little different. Mine, because I come from that legal background, I have a different perspective. So when I look at clients and I look at what I give advice, it's typically on the standard of a fiduciary. And for most people in the industry today, it's now thrown around a lot, but the reality is knowing what it really means. And I think that's what sets me apart, is knowing what that really means from the legal perspective. And so I take that to heart, and that background of legal, but also too, I have a master's in taxation. So that also helps. So it's a comprehensive education and experience background, which really brings it to the table of me being able to assist people in different financial stories that they're all going through, right? Some people are more in the mature stage, close to retirement, or they're already in retirement. And then there's some people who are just starting off. There's some people in the middle, just starting to get their feet with more additional assets. And so they have financial questions. So there's this cross spectrum of different people, of different sets of life and different goals. But because I have such a diverse background in not just financials, but legal and taxation, that really gives me the ability to give to my clients that real, true, comprehensive approach.
Yeah. And knowing you and knowing some of your history, you've traveled overseas many times. How does that affect the services that you're able to offer?
Right. So that's a great answer to the second one, too, in an extension, because obviously I still stay in touch with a lot of people in the legal field and a lot of them are my clients. But what I did too is I still stay connected. And one of the groups I stay connected with is called IASIA. It's an international young lawyers attorney group. And they travel, they have conferences throughout the world, and each conference is dealing with different legal issues, but also financial. It's like a connection between the two worlds. And it's usually educating on the impacts in different countries of how each country is going to define that new asset. For example, right off the bat, you can go with crypto or NFTs. That's something that is entirely on the new cusp of legal in many countries. So having that education and knowledge of what's going on in internationally really does help my ability to give the best advice. But also too, what it's done, it's given me the opportunity to service the clients that I do have now in a different way, because now I have an international connection and as well as trusts that are overseas as well. So that's another avenue that obviously you can't just roll up to Merrill Lynch and usually get that or any other type of financial firm out there. They're really specific to money management or relationship management where they're putting you a portfolio allocation in the secondary market. But for me, it's much more diverse. Having the ability to have so many connections really helps my clients in different strategies in tax savings, in investment other than the secondary market, into real estate, into partnerships. And so it really broadens the spectrum of, and this is really what it comes down to. It's wealth management. What you're doing is it's not just financial advice on the secondary market, the stock market, when I say the secondary market, but it's also too, it's about our retirement accounts, but it's everything. You're looking at the objective of growing wealth. And in doing so, you need to look at different avenues of investing. And so that international play really comes into that realm of giving that extra distinction between me and other advisors.
Mm-hmm. And you talked a bit about your clients. You work with clients all across the country, right? So who's your ideal client?
Yes, I have clients all across the country. My ideal client, that's a really good question because there is such thing as an ideal client. Most people will say, hey, you know what? Here's a pile of money, go make good returns. That's not the client that I would say that most advisors would probably take that client hands down. But to put the ideal client at the top of the list, the ideal client knows that it's not just about making a high return. It's also meeting those financial goals that are going to increase their wealth. Because like I said, you can't get that kind of return if you're thinking about tax strategy, right? So tax strategy is different. You're looking for tax efficiency. And so you got to have a game plan for that and a financial plan that's not quantified in a return, right? So that is going to show that difference.
Mm-hmm. And how do those people, your ideal clients, how do they find you?
How do they find me? To be straight up honest, most of my clients are referrals from other clients that I already have. People see already what I do and what I've done for them. And so they just usually refer family, friends, whoever they're associated with at work, and they'll send my way. But basically, that's usually how people find me. But for those who are not in those loops of those circles that I'm connected with, then you would just go obviously to my website, and that's a good location to find any information you need about me and if ways to contact me in the future.
For those clients who are raving fans and want to tell all their friends and family about you, what are some of the common issues that you've helped them with?
The most common issue is again in the financial planning part, because I think most people, like I said, going back to most You just put into a portfolio, put into your retirement account, and you just try to max out the returns as much as you can. You do that, but they don't really know what they're going to get in retirement. There's a common thing that most people want to know is that have that confidence, right? So they have a game plan. If they say, okay, if I put down this percent of my income for this many years, what does that look like in retirement? How much am I going to be able to take out? Will I be able to invest into a second property? Will I be able to pay for my grandchildren's college fund? There's so many different financial goals that they have, but they need to see that how that growth in that account and what that end result of contributions are going to be to really determine if that's going to be what's going to keep them complete confidence at night when they go to bed, right? When you don't have to worry, you've got a game plan, you have what you're going to contributing, and you can change that accordingly, right? Because life changes, income changes. So all these things need to be adjusted on the way. But if you have a game plan, that's going to give you that confidence. And I think that's the most universal thing across every person of every stage is that they're looking for that confidence that they want to have.
That makes sense. And so what are some of the common misconceptions that you face with clients bringing in their ideas of how things are going to work or what they should do?
Right. So yeah, that's a very common thing of misconception. Number one, right off the bat, that the only thing I do is manage the money and get a high return. That's the simple term. That's the old school way of thinking. As far as when most people had a stockbroker, right? And he'd go in and he'd say, "The stockbroker, give me some finance stock tips or investment tips to get a high return." Well, in all honesty, the misconception there is that I'm so much more than that. As I told you before, the background and education that I've been given really comes to the service of my clients in all capacity, from estate planning to tax planning and financial planning, and then even to their business. We even go over business planning as well. So acquisitions, mergers. I mean, there's such a cross spectrum of multiple things that people have me at their disposal of asking that they're doing the tip of the iceberg if they're just coming to me for just investments in the stock market, right? It's just the tip of the iceberg. There's just so much more beneath that they can take advantage of and get service for.
Yeah, that makes sense. Can you tell me a story about a client that got it wrong and then came to you to fix things?
Absolutely. That's an easy one. So there was an individual who came to me, and he was more of an older stage in the investment profile. Basically, he was already close to retirement. I think his wife was already in retirement. He was about to be in retirement. And so they had been told that as you get older, you transition to more conservative investing and more safer investing. Well, unfortunately, whoever was giving him this advice had him, I would say, probably 90% of his investments were allocated into bonds. And so at the time when he came to me and I saw that, for any advisor out there, they're always going to tell you to be diversified. But even more when there's certain economic conditions, you have to take notice, especially with something in balance as a 90% bond investments. And the reason why is this is because bonds are affected tremendously by interest rates. So I let him know that if you keep it this way, and the Federal Reserve most likely is projected to lower rates, that's going to really make these bonds really, they're going to drop like a rock. And the Federal Reserve is going to eventually start to raise those rates. And the same thing's going to happen if you have this allocation so much into the bond market, it's going to have a huge effect on your portfolio. So my recommendation at the time was to sell some of those bonds, get more into equity so that he can take advantage of when the growth cycle is going to happen again, right? And that was definitely something to say that he had just gone a traditional advisory or just allocation, he would have been a lot better off than focused all on just to the bond market just because of his age.
That's great. And you were able to help him fix that. So he was able to have an effect on his life from you being there.
Yeah, absolutely.
What's a story of a huge win for a client where you were able to help them meet their goals?
Sure. Well, there's a couple of stories with that one. And I say that okay, so one real quick that I really love is when somebody was able to, because usually I go by keeping a spreadsheet for them and we do an annual review. And that annual review is like, this is where we should be, right? As far as the account, within a range, not too small, not too over, not too less. It's just in that target range. And the reason why you want to do that is for accountability, because if we can hit that each goal every year, if we mark a 10-year goal or a 15-year goal, we're going to achieve it because we're hitting the mark every year to get to that goal. So in doing that process, there's been a couple of years where these one clients were exceeding it by like 20, 30% every year. And at that point, I usually give them the choice. Hey, do you want to continue this? You can continue to increase it so that your retirement income can grow even more if you want to pull out more, or you can have the choice of retiring early, or you have the ability to use that money right now. Just go on a trip, go buy a nice car, whatever you want to do. It's your money,
Wow.
but it's extra.
What a great set of choices.
Exactly. It's a great choices for people. And yeah, that's such a great ability to share that with them, and then they decide what they want to do. And it's a lot of fun that way.
Yeah. Now, what would you say is your biggest challenge as a financial advisor?
My biggest challenge, I think, is that communication of letting people know that, again, that tip of the iceberg. People just come to me for the investments in the stock market, and putting together a portfolio, but it's much more than that, right? There's just so many other elements into someone having that financial confidence in their future. And so all those elements will play into it. Like, for example, I know we didn't talk about it that much, but on estate planning, you want to have this kind of understanding of their family being taken care of. And it's not just their children, but it's also their parents themselves. So there needs to be from life insurance, from those types of insurance vehicles that are going to be best in taking care of the family, as well as long-term care. That's also an aspect that many people don't consider. They're so focused on putting money for retirement, they're not thinking that most people, when they get older, you're going to need medical care. You're going to need more trips to the doctor, and most likely you're going to need some type of care as far as helping you when you get really old, right? So instead of putting that burden on the family or taking more money than you thought you would be taking out of your retirement, you give them that other option that gives them that confidence, so that when they know that they're going in that direction, that their family's going to be okay. They're not going to worry about that. So that's just one aspect. Yeah.
What would you say is your favorite part of all the work you do? What's the best part?
The best part of what I do is when people achieve their goals, plain and simple. It's always great to excel, like that example of that one client being able to have all those extra choices on an annual basis. But it's even better when they actually achieve those goals, right? When they come to me for the first time and they say, hey, I want to own an investment property. We do it. We get it accomplished. I want to put together a college fund for my grandkids. We do it. So getting those goals achieved at what they wanted to do is the best thing, because you're doing your job, or I'm doing my job.
That sounds amazing. So fulfilling.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's all the time we have for today. Thanks everybody for listening. This has been the Legacy Leaders Podcast with your guest host, Matrona Jessica Ward. My guest today was Roland Ortiz. For more information on Roland and the work he does, you can visit his website at myathenawealth.com, and we'll also link it in the show notes for you. Roland, thank you again for joining me.
Of course. Thank you for having me.
You've been listening to the Legacy Leaders Podcast with Katie Beth Hand and Stan Miller. For more information on them and the show, please visit pinnaclelegacylaw.com. If you like what you've learned today, do share the program with your friends and subscribe wherever podcasts are found.